AI and Teens, Collective Efforts for AI Literacy Across Europe. I'm Vincenzo Zenozenkovic. I'm Professor of Comparative Law at Roma Tre University, and I've been working on data protection only, well, since the 108 Convention of the Council of Europe, which is sometime around the mid of last century. We have a very much younger panel than myself, and I'll just to present the panelists. We have Professor Maria da Graça Canto Moniz, who is professor at Nova University in Lisbon and member of the South European, South EU Google Data Governance Chair. Then we have Professor Georgios Yiannopoulos, Professor of Legal Informatics at Essen University, and also he a member of the South EU Google Data Governance Chair. Then we have Clara Hawkins, head of the AI department at Globe Educate, which based in Madrid, but probably based in various parts of Spain and Europe. And then finally, last but not least, obviously, sorry very much, Marta Moraz from Veritas, which is an institution based in Pamplona, Spain, which works on, she's a marketing director at Veritas, based in Pamplona, and which works on facial recognition, artificial intelligence, and other aspects. We will have this order. We will open up with Professor Canto Moniz, who will speak of children's rights. Then we will move to Marta Moraz, who will speak of AI, generative AI, and protection of minors. Clara Hawkins on how AI is integrated in schools. Georgios Yiannopoulos on AI and plagiarism. Professor Guido Scorza, who is a member of the Italian Data Protection Authority, is traveling from Rome to Zagreb for a conference in occasion of the first 20 years of the Croatian Data Protection Authority, and therefore will be able to join us online only at 11:15. This is just to point out. And then if there are if there's some time, I will just give a few. I have a short presentation myself, but that is just in case, just we must fill in some gap. So let's start with Professor Maria da Graça Canto Moniz, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning. So, as Professor Vincenzo has already mentioned, I'm going to talk about the rights of the child, and I want to point to one or two challenges ahead, but in particular one challenge I will explore with more detail. So first reflection, why should we discuss the rights of the child in a panel about AI literacy? Well, I don't have a dogmatic or a doctrinal definition of my own, but I think that we can define AI literacy as an understanding, a general understanding of skills that all of us need to have to interact with, understand, and critically evaluate AI systems. And of course that all these capacities have a range of aspects that have the goal to enable individuals, including children, to navigate the digital world where AI is increasingly relevant. And of course that among those competencies, among those capacities, rights should be included, and especially knowledge about the rights that all of us have, and in particular children. So children have a set of rights recognized internationally and in the European Union law also. There are a lot of instruments that give children directly rights. And in EU law, when we discuss artificial intelligence before the AI Act, there was one piece of law that was particularly relevant, which was the GDPR, and still is, of course. And in the GDPR, children are data subjects, like any adult is, and they hold many specific rights. So they have the right to be informed, they have the right to access to their personal data, and so on and so forth. And despite this comprehensive protection in the sense that the GDPR recognizes a significant number of data subject rights, there are a couple of questions that remain to be asked or can be discussed, and I think they are relevant to point out in this panel. The first question is if these rights are enough, of course. Enough to protect a child in an age of AI, which is a new age, I would say it like this. And the second question, which is the one that I would like to discuss more here and put more emphasis on, is the question of when and if should a child exercise rights on her own. The GDPR, when we read the GDPR does not have a solution for this problem, does not answer to the problem of when a child should or should not exercise her or his rights. But if we look at member states' execution of the GDPR, we see that there are different approaches and different perspectives. And basically, there are two big groups of solutions. One solution is looking at age as the only criteria. So basically, in some countries like Scotland and Netherlands, the law of the member state says that a child with 14, 15, 13 years old can exercise the rights on her own. But before this age, it should have a legal representative to do so. And in this case, age is the only criteria to assess if a child can exercise rights on her own. The other approach is the approach that we can see, for example, in countries like Portugal, Ireland, and even in the UK, which is looking at age, but also looking at other criteria. And the other criteria are a bit of fuzz and are different from member state to member state. For example, in Portugal, the Data Protection Authority says that we should look at age, we should look at the type of right that the child wants to exercise, we should look at the relationship that the child has with the data controller, with the company, and so on and so forth. So this second option, the second solution, is an interesting solution because it's trying to find a balance between the need to ensure that the child is digitally empowered, let's say it like this, but also recognizes the need to protect the child in general. So what is the main legal challenge that I want to point out? First of all, in the United Nations Convention of the Rights of the Child, as you can see there, there's an article, Article 12, that basically acknowledged generally, not for the digital world, but generally acknowledged that children should have the right to participate in the decisions that affect them. In many countries, the ability of children to participate in decisions is already settled, depending on the age, for example, for medical procedures. And in some common law jurisdictions, there is this doctrine, which is the mature minor doctrines, that allows children considered mature, which can be assessed in a case-by-case scenario, for example, to make some decisions regarding medical treatment, consent, their own medical care, and so on and so forth, within a certain age, 14 to 15 age. But the question that I want to point out is, in the digital realm, how should we assess a child's capacity to take decisions or to participate at least decisions affecting her life. Is age the only criteria that we should use, or should we follow or discuss approaches like the Portuguese one and the approach in the UK and in Ireland also? And of course that there is another challenge, looking at the company's perspective, because in the GDPR and in the AI Act and in other laws, companies have an obligation not just to allow children to exercise their rights, but to help them to do so. And this is something more. And the problem is that different approaches and the lack of legal certainty about this topic only makes compliance more challenging from the perspective of the company. So I don't have a final answer for this problem, but I would like to point to two possible conclusions. One is that we need more research to inform AI policies and digital policies and practices that support positive development and uphold children's rights. I think this is clear for me. And the second possible conclusion at this stage is that we need to have more efforts between researchers at all levels, policymakers, educators, and technologists, in order to ensure how and if we can find the right balance between age as the only criteria to assess if a child has capacity to exercise her rights and other criteria that can be used. And I think that the diversity in this panel is a very good example of the kind of efforts that we need to make. Thank you very much.
Thanks to Professor Canto-Muniz. Maybe I should have, I apologize, I should have just given the sort of background of this panel is Article 4 of the AI Act, which says, which is titled AI Literacy. Providers and deployers of AI systems shall take measures to ensure to their best extent a sufficient level of AI literacy of their staff and other persons dealing with the operation and use of AI systems on their behalf, taking into account their technical knowledge, experience, education, and training, and the context the AI systems are to be used in, and considering the persons or groups or persons on whom the AI systems are to be used. Just to, sorry, I think the whole panel, we have this on our background. Now I'll give, very glad to give the floor to Marta Moraz from Veritas, Director of Marketing, and speak of Generative AI and protection of minors.
Thank you. Well, I want to repeat that I'm a marketing director, just to apologize beforehand, because I'm surrounded by experts in AI and I believe technicians as well. So I just want to make that clear. If I make any mistakes, I'm sure people in the audience are experts as well. It's a pleasure to be here, and I too feel honored and grateful. I think AI is the most powerful tool society has ever had. And I want to start by saying that because we were just discussing this prior to the panel. I think there's a general feeling of fear towards AI. We're just focusing mainly on the threats and risks, and obviously there are many, and we need to look at those carefully. But we need to, I think, look at AI with a positive approach and attitude. And I will show you a few examples today of that. Let's start discussing about AI literacy, which is the first topic of this panel. I think that is very, very important, and I'll show you a few examples now of how we as a company are collaborating in some initiatives. And I know, I'm sure Clara will show you many more. But I think we need to focus a lot of on this AI literacy, not only with children, also with other people, as you will see in the examples, because AI is going to affect future and current generations in every aspect of their lives, not just professional, but personal as well. So no matter whether they want to become a doctor, a lawyer, or an athlete, people need to understand about AI, and I think they need to look at it as a language that they need to at least understand. Maybe not speak fluently, but understand. So the first example that I want to show you is a school program that we participated with, schools in Navarra, in the north of Spain. That's where I'm from and where Veritas is based. And what you can see in the picture, we had the visit of the Majesties, the King and Queen of Spain, and we showed them this initiative with 15-year-old kids, which with just 30 hours of training by our employees on artificial intelligence, they were able to develop neural networks to spot fake Instagram accounts with a 92% accuracy with the databases that they were given. So I think this is a great example of one, we should look at education, and I'll leave that for Clara to explain in much more detail. But as it happens with everything, it's the basis, right? We need to start with kids and education. And the second message that I think this example shows is, again, I think when we talk about AI, sometimes we're overwhelmed by it, especially when we talk about generative AI. So this is an example of how with 30 hours, a 15-year-old kid was able to program a neural network. The second example, it's not directed at kids, but it's directed at a, I think, very important sector of society as well, and it's people who might be left out by AI. So what you see in the pictures is the program that we called Digital Builders. We launched this together with the government of Navarra, and it's oriented to people older than 30 years old, with no background whatsoever on computer science. And it's a 6-month program that has 600 hours of assisted practice and 300 hours of individual practice in order for them to become developers and programmers. So most of them have been hired by digital companies already. Some of them are working at Veritas. And we're launching the 3rd edition of this program this year as well. So it's been a success. Something that I forgot to mention on the school programs as well is that we launched the Week of AI. So it's a week where we have 20 hours of activities for kids focused on the creation, use, and ethics of AI. This, again, was launched as a pilot in different schools in Navarra and will be extended to every school next year. So I think, and I'm sure, as I said, we will see many more examples later, but these 2 examples, and they're pilots that could be spread across everywhere in Europe, and I think they're very interesting, and they convey the message that we need to talk about AI and we need to understand how AI can help us, foster and divide wealth and knowledge and growth across everywhere in the world, something that couldn't happen as easy before. And the second question, the second part of the panel was about protecting minors and protecting fundamental rights. Maria has talked a lot about this, and I think what she mentioned was very interesting. My answer to the question, how can we guarantee fundamental rights, starts with identity. We have rights as people because we have an identity, and that's what grants us rights and responsibilities as well. So there's 3 ways to verify a person's identity, and this is stated in the European Union Regulation of Payments, the PSD2. It's something we know, something we have, or something we are. So the ones that refer to something we know or something we have are based on a presumed identity. Why? Because something that I know could be known by someone else, and something that I use, or that I have, could be used by someone else. Something that I know would be a password, something that I have could be a code that I get on my phone, or a card in the physical world. So the only way to link ourselves to our real identity, it's something that we have, our face, our voice. And this is what biometrics is, and it's the most ancient and natural way to identify people. is the way our closed ones identify us. So when I call my mom on the phone, I don't tell her a password, she recognizes my voice. And when people say hi to me on the street, it's because they know me and they recognize my face. So what we do at Veritas is allow companies and users to have those same relationships through this trust and confidence. So what happens in the internet is that it was built without an identity layer. A user and a password does not guarantee that the person behind that is who they say they are. So when we talk about minors and we want to protect them from, I don't know, bullying attacks on social media, we need to have real identities behind those accounts. And I'm not saying this should be revealed all the time. It should be done with, a trial and due processes, obviously, and we need to guarantee privacy. Biometrics works with, the principles of irreversibility, meaning that when an image is processed, it's transformed into a biometric vector, and I cannot retrieve the original image. And it's not interoperable, meaning that it cannot be used with other systems. So once we understand that, and the European Union has understood that, and the AI Act is a great example of that, we understand that it's the only way to protect minors. We need to link to identity. And then when we talk about, when we talk about age verification specifically, let's say I go to a grocery store and I want to buy a beer. The person selling that beer only needs to know that I'm older than 18 years old. They don't need to know my name. They don't need to know my identity. Now, how do I verify that I'm older than 18 years old? It might be obvious for me, but it's a person doing that check. Now, when we go to the internet and we think about adult sites or gaming sites, the only method that we're using right now is asking a question. Are you older than 18 years old? Who's going to say no if they want access to that? So that's the only measure that we have. So there's different technologies that adapt to compliance and to the principles of sharing the minimum amount of data that can work with this. So one could be a full identity verification that would include an ID document and a selfie. Another one would be age estimation. So this would only ask the person to take a selfie, and then the biometric engine, without knowing who that person is, will say, this person is older, this person is not. For the person that is not, then we would require a full identity verification, which is the same that happens in the physical environment. If I go to a bar and I'm younger than 18 years old, they're going to ask me for my ID. And then there's a third option, which is, I think, very interesting to discuss here today as well, in the context of the European Union, which is an identity wallet. The European Union is taking the lead here as well. And what this could do is verify the identity of a person once, and then grant access or give that information to each side. But what this does is it gives full control of the data to the user. So the user decides what data they want to share, and that there's traceability on that as well. And I just want to close on the role of legislators, which I believe it's fundamental. As I said at the beginning, I think AI, it's a very powerful tool. I think we should look at it and see the good things and the bad things, but just as we do with everything. I mean, picture a knife. A knife could be used to cook and feed people, and it could be used to kill someone. But what do we do as a society? Ban the use of knives? No, we don't. We put limits to what we do, obviously. So I think for AI, it's the same. We shouldn't ban the technology itself. We should look at the uses of it. And this is how the AI Act is structured, on a risk categorization basis. So I think legislators need to understand very well how the technology works. I think for that, they need to talk to different stakeholders, including companies, and then put the limits to what can and cannot be done. And that's the only way. So my answer to how spread AI literacy and protect minors would be, we need to teach them, we need to protect them, and then legislators have to put limits to that. So thank you.
Thanks to Marta Moras. Now the floor is to Clara Hawkins, Head of AI Department in Globe Educate.
Let's see here. All right. Let me make sure the slides are here. All right. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak here. So I work as head of AI for Globe Educate, and Globe Educate is a group of schools. We have schools all over the world. We are for-profit, private international schools, and most of our schools are either bilingual or trilingual, meaning that we offer both the national curriculum and some sort of an international curriculum, and sometimes a third pathway as well for our trilingual schools. And we have students at a variety of ages. So we have from 6 months, really, because we have pre-primary. And we also have some adult vocational education as well for adults with significant cognitive disabilities, where we're helping them find a pathway into the workforce. And my job, amongst other roles that I have, is to ensure that we're integrating artificial or generative or advanced artificial intelligence into our school ecosystem in a safe way and an effective way that ensures that it aligns with the values that we have, which includes excellent education, but also character building, providing a global education and ensuring that students are raised up with global perspectives and that they learn the skills and competencies that they need for the future. And we know with AI that we've had in the classroom for the last 20 years through Google and some of the narrow AI technologies that we've used in the classroom, that AI can be used to enhance learning experiences. It can be used to support students with individualized education, and it can also be leveraged to come up with creative learning strategies and also be used for innovation. But generative AI is a different beast than the AI that we've had in the classroom before, and it is not just a technology that we can bring in as a kind of a software and students work with in a closed environment. It's an AI that's literally changing what it means to be a human being living on planet Earth. And we need to raise the children up, not just to learn their curriculum, but really learn how to be citizens that are living with these very advanced technologies and future advanced technologies, such as advancements in quantum computing that we've heard about earlier in the week, but that will start to impact our students and our school environment within the next 1 to 2 decades, most probably. So what are we focused on? We're focusing on ensuring safety, and we're focused on ensuring that we ensure that the children are in an environment where we protect their fundamental rights and the fundamental rights of our teachers and other staff members that are asked to leverage these technologies in the work setting. And one of the things that we are looking very closely at is how do we ensure that we have robust compliance, and how do we ensure that we build oversight systems for all of our schools. We've then looked at what are the lessons that we've learned from GDPR, because we believe that our pathway through GDPR on the ground in practical applications can help us build better oversight systems into the future. And it can be from the very, in the very small scale, A teacher is working in a Microsoft school, but they don't really know how to use Microsoft. It's much faster to hop into Google and do a few things, send some email, work on some documents, upload some student files, and so on. And so they use their private Google address, and then they transfer it into the Microsoft system when it's time to send it off. 2 years later, the teacher leaves the school. How do we know that this data has been deleted, and what happened to the data while it was sitting in a private Google account? Two more complex issues. We have a lot of movement in and out of our ecosystem. Teachers come and go, students come and go, but they also get 1 year older all the time and move into a new system of storing data and using data in the classroom. And they also become increasingly autonomous. Some students bring their devices to school, use them there for schoolwork, and so they're constantly moving in and out of a system that's very hard for us to maintain. Now we're asking them to learn how to use generative AI, and we're struggling with ensuring that we have the system in place to make sure that they're not jumping into any large language model, but into a large language model where our teachers have been trained, and that the information that's being used inside of that system is something that we could conceivably audit and track so that we can be compliant with the new legislation that's coming out. So we do need systems similar to GDPR, but the big question remains, how do you actually do that? How do you practically do that in schools? And as you know, schools, not just private schools, but definitely public schools, are notoriously underfunded. Where will the training come from? Where will the time come from? Something that no school has. Who will take on that role? How will the government that provide national curriculum support the schools in being compliant in the years to come? And then finally, how will schools be assisted in ensuring that systems cannot be misused and that children's fundamental rights are protected? A good example, I think, is privacy. We saw what happened, I believe, during the pandemic, where our tech companies were very sweet to share all of their applications for free. And we also know in retrospect that the same tech companies were putting trackers on children's devices, were using the data and scraping it without parental consent, without child consent, and without teachers understanding what it really was that they were asking the children to do when they were asking them to sign on to Zoom calls and team calls and Google Meets. So we need legislation specifically directed at how we protect our children when they are engaging with the technologies. We also are working on ensuring that our schools are more informed AI consumers, along with other exciting things that have happened in the last 2 years. Our heads of schools around the world have absolutely drowned in emails from tech startups, edtech startups who have the perfect solution as to how to use generative AI in the classroom so the children can learn better than ever before. But they're asking a consumer that doesn't really understand how technology works and doesn't really understand what they are saying yes to when they purchase a product. So we are supporting our schools from the Globe Educate side in ensuring that they understand how to vet the vendors and how to, I'm realizing I'm sitting here chatting away. And I'm forgetting to click here. There we go. How to vet our vendors before we sign a contract with them. What are the critical questions based on safeguarding, risk management, privacy, and data protection that we need to ask that are in the best interest of the child, best interest of the parents or guardians at home, and protect the fundamental rights of our educators as well. We need to have an ecosystem of users of this technology that are competent to make informed decisions. One of our primary stakeholders that I think have been overlooked in the 20 years of bringing digital technology into the classroom are our parents. They're a big focus area for us. We need to make sure that our parents are understanding the ecosystem that their child is in. And our parents are unique because they are first generation parents raising children with advanced technologies. And I think the importance of that have been significantly overlooked. When I were raising up my own children, if I needed advice on something, I could call my grandmother and say, they're teething, what am I going to do? And she would say, oh, just put cognac on their gums, they'll be fine in 5 minutes. Or they have a diaper rash, or whatever else it might be. But the generation of parents that we have now, they haven't been able to call their parents or grandparents to ask for help. And so we need to support our parents in understanding how to give informed consent. What is it that happens when a parent says, oh, I know you're not old enough to use TikTok or Instagram or WhatsApp, but we'll just lie about your age and do it anyway. What are they actually saying yes to? And we need to ensure that we have a better relationship, a better pathway of communication between our parents and our youth. I'm going to hop forward here a little bit because I want to close with talking about student agency. Our students are being encouraged throughout all of our schools to be active participants in the conversations that we have about AI, from AI literacy curriculum development to conversations about the teachers, about how we do that practically in the classroom, to being involved with leadership decision. It is significant, I think, that we're at this conference and there is not a single child or young person present at this conference telling us what it's like to be them right now in this digital environment that they live in. We must invite them into the table. We must stop talking about them and speaking with them about what it is they actually need and what they are actually experiencing. So I encourage all of you to think about ways that you can bring young people into the conversations, in the design process, in your thinking processes, through all of these problems. Let the children be part of solving them. And thank you for the time that we had in this panel together. And I look forward to hearing what you do with our young people around the world. So thank you for that.
Thanks to Clara Hawkins. Now the floor is to Professor Yorios Yiannopoulos, Professor of Legal Informatics at the University of Essen. Yorios.
Yes. Do I go ahead? Hello. Thank you, Vincenzo. Just very briefly, I'm going to talk about the problem of plagiarism. The problem of plagiarism is well known. We are running, hold on, I have to, because I'm not watching the thing. Okay. So we run an LLM program at the University of Athens, which is one of the very few programs in a law school that has got also the course artificial intelligence. Now, we all know that there's a tendency among students to use generative AI, mainly ChatGPT, in all its versions. For that purpose, we have this other software, which is called Turnitin. For those of you that don't know it, you just upload an essay on Turnitin, and then you get a percentage of plagiarism. Nowadays, Turnitin can also distinguish between any texts that have been written by generative AI. Now, instead of doing all that and trying to check the essays of students, what we did last year was that we instructed students to write their essay with ChatGPT. We are talking about law students, we are talking about a legal essay, and the task was to show that this has been written by a person having proper legal structure and argumentation. Now, before proceeding, we have to establish what kind of AI we're talking about. Of course, we are talking about large language models, the ChatGPT, and artificial neural networks. We have to say that because, sorry, I have to put it like that, because people talk about AI, and they mean everything. We have to realize that in the first place, we must follow a definition of AI, but also bear in mind, AI is about all 5 senses of humans. So we have to distinguish each time about which AI we are talking about. Now, what was the experiment? The experiment was that we have asked students to write an essay, which was, you know that we have the data, the DSA, the Digital Services Act, from which is a regulation of the European Union, which has been voted last year, I think in October last year, maybe, yes. So we've asked the students to write the preamble for a Greek law introducing this particular piece of legislation in Greece. After the essay had been written by ChatGPT, of course, we had certain criteria regarding the input. And the first question was whether the system has understood the question. And then regarding the output, we had 3 criteria: the content, the structure, and the extent. The content concerned the basic points, whether the basic points of the particular regulation have been covered. The structure had to do with the logical sequence of any such argumentation. And the extent was the coverage, whether this was a proper text and not just an abstract, just a summary. After all, we have seen that the system, first of all, has not identified that DSA has been voted, that it was ambiguous. And second, it has not identified all the basic points, the basic players of this particular piece of legislation, which meant that the students have had to add a lot of text to make it look like a proper text coming from a human. Also, on top of that, there was a lot of missing information. Missing information was more because we did the experiment in both Greek and English. The situation was, Greek is a very difficult language, so the situation was worse in Greek. It was a little bit better in English. Now, what was the outcome of this whole situation? Our understanding was that the system, any system of generative AI, is useful when you are in a position, you already have the knowledge and you are in a position to verify the answers in comparison with to the original sources. Especially you can use the ChatGPT as a checklist for guideline source. For anything not trivial, I mean, something which enters the limits of deep legal expertise, then the user had to verify the answers with an expert. In that sense, putting confidence in generative AI may limit the advancement of self-learning for students, of problem-solving, critical thought, and creativity. All these things are put in question if they just use ChatGPT or any other software without any verification. That sort of verification may require more time. What is the meaning of that? You may need more time instead of writing the essay or the text by yourself without ChatGPT. On top of that, we have a lot of ethical and legal concerns. I have already mentioned the learning abilities and skills which are missing. We should always check, as I said, the quality and accuracy of information. Also, we have the ethics, the academic standards, because academic standards and ethics may require you to refer to particular sources, to refer to the use of particular AI systems. We have the ethical problem that in some instances, and we have seen that in the COMPASS system in the United States, that in many cases, generative AI may reproduce stereotypes regarding gender, race, ethnicity, and so on. There have been some accusations that the system is racist. No, it's not the system racist. It's already existing sources. It's the way we think, the way we learn that has been transferred to the system. If what we have in hand is makes discriminations, then also the system will make discriminations regarding all these things, gender, race, sex, or whatever. Also, we have the question of equality of access, this so-called digital gap. Some people will be able to have access to generative AI properly and have the skills to use it. Some people may not. And finally, the problem of localization. I will insist on that because of being Greek, and as I said, the Greek language has got some problems in that. We may have the easiness of using it in English, okay, and most of the sources are in English, but how about less favored languages and areas? You will see that if you use ChatGPT, if you try localized things in other languages, in minority languages and so on, you won't find much information. Last but not least, two legal problems. Me being a law professor, I have to refer to that. We have the big data collection in contrast with the GDPR, and data collection in contrast with intellectual property. GDPR requires the minimum of data to be used. Generative AI must use a lot of data. So there is a contradiction there which has not been solved. Second, there's a lot of discussion about the intellectual property rights of previous creators of information. As you know, ChatGPT is using existing information. Do we have rights on that existing information? Do we have to do something about that? A big discussion is going on. How can you use, the moral of the story is, how can we use how can we use generative AI properly? It is essential to establish that the users, mainly the students or teenagers, do not act as passive receivers. They should question and criticize everything that they get as an input. They should scrutinize information and they must verify the sources. Digital literacy, Maria Grazia has already talked about that. We must understand how generative AI works. Sorry. A lot of people think, they talk generally about AI. The example that I'm bringing to my students as well, and which I've got it there, is the one of the car mechanic and the car driver. If you are about to write down regulation about driving, the code of traffic or so, you do not need to be a car mechanic, but you must know how to drive a car. If you are about to set limits like 50 kilometers within the town and 100 kilometers in the highway, you must be able to drive to understand what you are going to regulate. I use the same example about AI. You don't need to be a computer engineer, but you must understand the basic principles of how this thing works. We need also precise rules and policies regarding the use of AI, especially policies in universities and educational institutions. We need a policy. Are we allowed to use it or are not? If yes, if the answer is yes, then we should have some rules in place. And as I said, we have to enhance materials in less favored languages. My final word, what next? And what next is that I'm always, in my presentations, I'm always against prohibition. Prohibition is not an option. We should consider generative AI the way we use other tools. Remember automatic translators, automatic spell checkers? Do you remember calculators? Do you remember there was a time we were not allowed to use calculators at school? Well, at least I'm that old enough to remember that. So prohibition is not an option. I think, on the other hand, we should develop initiatives for a sort of resilient educational environment where generative AI will have its place. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Just, I'm asking, is Guido Scorza online? Yes, okay, then Guido Scorza, let's see if we can have him on screen. Guido, benvenuto.
Grazie, thank you. I'm sorry for the delay, but I'm here for another conference exactly at the same time.
Yes, Guido Scorza, Commissioner of the Italian Data Protection Authority, lawyer, professor of law, and a great friend. And Guido, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm very sorry to be here only remotely, but as you probably know, I'm in Croatia for the anniversary of our friends of the Data Protection Authority here. Coming to the topic of the today seminar, let me say that, in my opinion, is one of the most important and urgent challenges we need to face in the governance of artificial intelligence. As you probably said before, and I'm sorry if I wasn't here, online, one user on three more or less is minor. Then when we speak about children and artificial intelligence, we are speaking about billions of children that today and the next few months will use digital services based on generative artificial intelligence. Let me say, to be very, very honest and try to save time, that in my opinion, we must recognize that in the internet age, we didn't do enough to guarantee to children the opportunity to take all enormous advantages, benefits coming from digital services and platforms, limiting as much as possible the risk. And I believe, and I imagine that's one of the principal reasons because we are here today, that entering in the artificial intelligence age, we can and probably we must do better. But of course, isn't easy, and I imagine that my colleagues said, explained the main reason because isn't easy. We already had and still have teenagers showing their sexually explicit images with the chatbot companion based on exactly this kind of artificial intelligence, the generative one, and sharing with the same kind of applications any kind of very personal data, also about his or her physical and psychological health condition. And we already had teenagers using generative artificial intelligence services to modify images of their friends, to transform them in porn actor or porn actress without obviously understand the consequences of their activity. And we already had children asking services based on ChatGPT and other similar model for any kind of psychological information, any kind of help in any field of their life, and taking as correct any kind of answer without knowing that it's only a content generated on a probabilistic base. And we already had, and at Garante, we try to face also this kind of problem. We already had children look for artificial boyfriend and girlfriend. Boyfriend and girlfriend based on generative artificial intelligence. And obviously, we are only at the beginning because next Christmas, as we know, millions of children around the world will receive as gift toys connected to internet and based on generative artificial intelligence, able to have a quite natural conversation with them and able to read their emotion and obviously able to collect and to process any kind of personal information. I was a lawyer for more than 20 years before to be elected in the Garante. Probably I'm still a lawyer, but I'm not sure about that. And let me say that I don't believe that regulation alone could be the solution for this kind of problems. Here, the problem is, in my opinion, of course, more cultural and more educational, or as you suggested in the abstract of this seminar about literacy. It's a matter of fact that today we are investing more and we are planning to invest more in training algorithms, knowing humans, than in educating humans knowing algorithms. And I think the reason for which it happens are clear. Private companies need to be the first on market because competition and because they know very well after 30 years of internet the first mover rules, and they haven't time, and to be honest, I'm not sure they even as or perceive a real interest in educating people starting from children using better new technology. And government, especially because political instability, prefers to invest in something like technology, like algorithms, able to produce some economic benefits in very short period, than in education, able to produce only medium and long period benefits. That's the scenario from my point of view. Then the question here is what we can do together, I mean, as institutions, as regulators, as civil society and industry, and I would like to have the right answer to this question, but unfortunately I haven't. Then let me share with you in the next few minutes only some very personal proposal, both in terms of literacy and in terms of regulation. The first one is, or could be, probably the easier. I believe that exactly as in the case of internet, also speaking about generative artificial intelligence services, we have some services for all users, regardless the age, and some services only for people having a minimum age. And here, I believe we need to explain people that exactly as is normal to avoid that a minor drive a car is a normal, or better, is necessary, avoiding that the children can freely interact with the digital services and platform, not dangerous in se, but dangerous simply because not designed, not projected, not developed for children. My feeling here is, but I'm very curious to know the feeling about other colleagues. My feeling here is that for the most part of adults, for the most part of parents, still today, all generative artificial intelligence services are adequate also for children. And we need to pretend that artificial intelligence services provider really blocks children from using services not designed for them, implementing some strong age verification solution. The second proposal, the second consideration, probably more difficult, but is again in terms of regulation and education. This is about, let me say, the abuse of usability. And let me try to explain my idea with an example. OpenAI, from my perspective, doesn't acquire the millions of users in a week because the extraordinary powerful of its technology. also because the most part of people is completely unable to understand the complexity of ChatGPT and others generative AI services, but because the extraordinary usability of ChatGPT interface. The ChatGPT killer application, in my opinion, isn't algorithms, but the idea to provide an extraordinary new service based on a very complex technology as generative artificial intelligence is, through the same, let me say, WhatsApp interface. An interface then that when ChatGPT arrived on the market, billions of people, children included, all around the world already known and used for messaging, for discussing, testing, chatting in the personal and in the professional dimension of their life. Let me say that, in my opinion, if OpenAI offered the same extraordinary technology with a different interface, for example, the old DOS interface, I don't know if you remember, just a C and a double point symbol on a black screen, it would not have been, in terms of public, the same success. And the problem that I define the usability abuse, in my opinion, is that if the service provider present to us a very complex and powerful tool, giving us the impression, thanks to usability, that it's something quite normal, let me say, very easy to use, not dangerous, adequate for all, regardless the age, etc., we are pushed to use and let children use the service without posing ourselves any questions, without keeping attention to any possible collateral effect, without perceive any exigence to better understand the dynamics in which the service works, without investigate with the necessary critical spirit any possible sacrifice in terms of rights and freedom. It's in my opinion, one of the major dangers that we need to face is a danger that become unsustainable when the user is a child. Probably here the most part of us remember what happened in the past when we bought a washing machine or a microwave. It was sold with a very big user's manual and some very long warnings, and the most part of us, sooner or later, more or less in deep, totally or partially, we read it before using the washing machine or the microwave. And in some cases, microwave users manual in USA had also a warning say that you have to avoid to put a cat inside to dry it. Today, the most part of smartphone is sold without any user's manual, and digital services, including the ones based on generative artificial intelligence, are offered to the public without suggesting reading any kind of user's instructions or warning. I like usability. You can believe me. I'm sure that thanks to usability, the access to new technology is more, let me say, open and democratic. But we need to face the risk of the abuse of usability by industry and market, because we need that people, starting from younger people, avoid using generative artificial intelligence services in a sort of, let me say, brain-off modality. We need to explain people, starting from children, that they always have to switch on the brain before starting using an artificial intelligence services. And let me give you just an example to conclude. How many ChatGPT users, in your opinion, know the fact that ChatGPT, for instance, but also the same is okay for many different generative AI services, simply promise to generate very similar contents on probabilistic base and then can't be used looking for truth or reality? In my opinion, a very small percentage. The problem is, in my opinion, of course, how we can challenge the abuse of usability. That is one of the industry killer application in terms of market. How we can obtain that artificial intelligence service providers slow down the onboarding process, permitting to the users, at least to the younger, to understand, to take the time to understand the fundamental dynamics of the services. I haven't also here, unfortunately, the answer, but I believe that we need to find it. Obviously, we have too many other challenges to face to promote a safer artificial intelligence age for children, but we will discuss about that next time, hopefully from my side in presence. Thank you.
Thanks to Guido Scorza for point of view of the Italian Data Protection Authority. Now I think it's time for questions and answers. Are there? We have a microphone. Yes, there's someone there. If you could just present yourself just to increase the knowledge of our audience.
Thank you. My name is Niels Huybrechts. I work at SURF, the Dutch National Education and Research Network. I understand the outrage or the fears that Guido Scorza was presenting, and I understand as a parent that there's a lot of new stuff coming at us and a lot of dangers for our children. But as a parent, I think, or at least it's my experience, that this is not a very good basis to start a conversation with children and not a very good basis to educate them if you just point out all the dangers. So I was especially attracted by your call for participation of children. I wonder if you could explain a little bit how you do this at your schools. How do you invite children or young people at the table to take part in the discussions?
Let's put all the questions together and then we'll have an answer. There's another one there, back there. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Geraldine, and I'm a data protection officer for schools as well. And simple high-level question, but which actually has legal challenges behind it, is that parents disagree, and some parents want their children to be very digital savvy, and other parents want their children to be nearly offline as long as possible. So how can a teacher navigate these parental opposite choices? Thank you.
There's another question down there.
Hello, I'm Clara Straatma. I come from the University of Duisburg-Essen. I myself have a psychological background. I can only agree to the speaker before me. I was very thankful for the call for participation, because we as psychologists, we're always trying to include the groups we're so much talking about in terms of vulnerable groups, vulnerabilities, and that we have to include them. So thank you so much for that, first of all. I think my question also goes to Clara mostly, but also I'm interested in everyone else's opinion on this. So I think we can agree on the fact that education is key and that we need to put a lot of effort in education. But the debate that I've been stumbling upon in the past months and also the past years is that education, actually it's kind of a twofold thing. First of all, education, how far can education reach out to people? And this is where I'm asking you, because you said that you have collaborations with a lot of schools internationally. So I'm interested in your opinion on how far we can reach out to people, because in my mind, I worry about that we cannot reach every country. What about the socioeconomically disadvantaged countries where we might not be able to reach out to, and where education is maybe not the only way we can tackle this? And then maybe to everyone, is there an awareness of approaches apart from education, how we can reach out to everyone, kind of? Thank you.
Thanks. The panel has only 5 minutes to reply, so just please send your telegram your Twitter message to the audience. Go ahead. I don't know who wants to answer.
So for youth participation, what we've done in all of our schools is that we've asked the heads of schools, so from the top, to ensure that every school has established and formalized a system for an AI youth council, and that they have, before the beginning of the coming school year, established a schedule for the year of having consistent meetings with the AI Youth Council. We want them to meet once a month in the coming year, and we want the students involved in the decisions that are taken when it comes to AI literacy and AI use in the school. So we have really formalized that, and we're also working on formalizing so we have geographical clusters of having the students come together so that we can give them a platform to talk to each other without adult interference. The other question to address the screens is that AI literacy for us does not mean screen time. And I know that a lot of parents disagree. We have built a pathway for pedagogical thinking behind screens. So if a parent asks, what kind of technology is my child being exposed to, and why, and for how long, we have an answer for them. But we're really working very hard on figuring out how much of AI literacy can be taught effectively in an analog way, outside, on the playground, in the art room, and so on. So that has been a major focus for us. There was one more question.
I just can add something. Georgios Yiannopoulos said prohibition is not an option. I think one great issue is, can students bring digital devices in classroom, use them at school, and so on. And I think obviously it's not prohibition, which is a great issue. The thing is very simple, having some kind of mini digital license. You can use them provided you do a short classroom in which you have your digital license, and you can use that. Allows you to use not only your smartphone but also certain devices. And I think this is promotional. You have to give incentives, and you have to give incentives also to teachers. I mean, just think of the amount of especially primary, middle, and high school, university professors have a wonderful life. Those who go at school have a very difficult life. I know it. I'm a university professor, and so I know. It's a holiday all the year round. So the point is incentives. How you upgrade their knowledge? Obviously, we have limited fundings, but we can have bonuses for buying books, for doing educational activities, and so on. So I think incentive model is much better than the prohibition model, which seems to be very much behind the AI Act. Any other answers from the panel?
No, I was just going to mention for the last question, which was around how we can reach more undeveloped countries. For instance, the initiative that you first saw, we've done that in El Salvador as well, which is, it's a country that, has several problems in terms of developing. So I think, partnering with local NGOs and governments as well, apart from schools, obviously, is great. And the good thing about that initiative as well is that we taught the teachers themselves so that the initiative was sustainable. We did that remotely, and now it's the local teachers from El Salvador who teach the kids about computer science and things like that. Yeah.
I may just want to add also that it's not the digital divide is not a global problem. It's also a local problem. We see it already that there's a surge in interest and support around AI literacy in private schools, but the public sector is already falling behind, which means that even our children within our cities, in our local communities, are experiencing the disadvantages. I do fear that we will see this cash out as a social disadvantage for a larger group of people, and social advantages for a smaller group of people. what we are doing is we're addressing it as part of our commitment to global sustainability goals. So we're working with it as a part of our corporate social responsibility. We're trying to build a program now of teach one, so that we teach our Globe Educate teachers, and then our Globe Educate teachers teach teachers in locations who wouldn't otherwise have access to the information. And of course I would encourage all private businesses to do the same, but we need organizations. I'm very enamored with the work that UNESCO is doing. But we need our national governments to be deeply involved in this, if for no other reason, to avoid these negative social consequences that we'll see because of the divide.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Thanks to the audience, and from the South EU Google Data Governance Chair, from all the members of the board, we hope to meet again next year here in Brussels. Goodbye.